Hey everyone, Dr. Zio here again, and today we're here to talk about Power Rangers Dino Fury Season 2, Episode 2, The Festival. So in this episode, I guess you could say it's an Ion and somewhat Zayto focused episode, more so on Ion though, but as usual, we're going to do our summary, likes, dislikes, conclusion, and then again, just like yesterday, I didn't really have a question of the week here, didn't really bring up anything inquisitive in me. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So this episode is basically an Ion slash Zayto focused episode. So essentially, the episode opens up with Wreckmate returning to Area 62, and Slider does not like this. Those two have a very, I guess, strong rivalry going on, and so they are competing to take down the most Rangers. So Slider is going to use some sort of potion to make himself stronger, but Wreckmate ended up stealing it, so he uses the potion throughout the episode to get the upper hand on the Rangers. Meanwhile, back at the base, back at Dino Henge, Zayto and Ion teleport in because Solon called them for like urgent matters. Solon does mention that she needs some upgrades, but everything's all good. We actually called you in, and then the other Rangers pop in. They're like, hey, so we were looking up things. We realized that we don't really know when your birthday is. I guess they don't really have birthdays on RAFCON. What they do have is a yearly celebration called the Triple Sun Festival. That festival is a time when everyone comes around, they give gifts to each other, and then they have this thing called a flargon cake. So the Rangers are in the back making some flargon cakes for Zayto and Ion. They've also gotten them presents. So we have a motorcycle for Ion, because I guess he really likes motorcycles. He's been watching videos there in the base. And then good old Zayto gets some Dino chucks. They're basically nunchucks that he can use. So that was actually pretty cool. And the nunchucks do lead to some interesting fight scenes later on, or an interesting fight scene. I say "and" because immediately after they some of the Rangers go back to the back of the base to go check on the flargon cakes. Ion stays behind to use the nunchucks inside the base, but Solon specifically mentioned don't do that because the nunchucks are very powerful. Of course, Ion ends up damaging this container that holds spare parts. He ends up damaging the chucks themselves. Afterwards, the Rangers get called away for battle, so they split up in two teams. Ion, Javi, and Izzy go take on Wreckmate. Or not Wreckmate. They go take on Slider, while Ollie, Amelia, and Zayto go take on Wreckmate. Wreckmate makes quick work of the three of them, so then Zayto retreats to go get the nunchucks, or the Dino chucks, back from the base, and that leads to a very fun fight scene. It was a good fight, and we haven't seen nunchucks and Power Rangers in a hot minute. But before he can land a finishing blow, the chucks kind of explode and throw back both Zayto and Wreckmate. And then the Rangers retreat back to the base to kind of recuperate and kind of heal from their wounds. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the other squad of three is actually doing pretty well against Slider. Again, it's just Slider, not that big of a deal. But he's also not powered up or anything like that because he doesn't have the potion. So they beat him. He calls in some henchmen before he retreats, and then Wreckmate, after he's done dealing with Ollie, Amelia, and Zayto, pops in and makes quick work of those Rangers before they teleport out of there. Back at the base, Ion ends up admitting that, hey, this was my fault. I'm the one who wrecked the chucks, and in turn also wrecked the storage case. So they're like, okay, fine. The chucks are damaged, or we can't use the chucks anymore. One of them blew up. We don't have anything else in our arsenal that's strong enough to go ahead and to use to beat Wreckmate. So Zayto comes up with a good idea to look through the Legendary Ranger database to see what kind of weapon that they could kind of glean ideas from to make, because they don't really have anything else that they can use to beat Wreckmate with. So they end up looking at Jaden's Fire Smasher from Samurai, but Solon ends up telling them, hey, I don't know what the power discs were made out of, so we can't use that. They end up looking at Tori's Sonic Fin from Ninja Storm, but they don't use that for reasons I can't remember right now. Then they also switch over to Cycles, because Zayto says that, hey, a lot of Rangers had motorcycles. Let's go ahead and check into that. So they end up cycling through clips of the Shark cycles from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't remember which season they debuted. They look at the Wild Forces. I think there was sort of the Savage cycles. And they also, well, Solon's like, hey, you know, that's nice and all, but y'all can just teleport into battle. Y'all don't really need cycles. And then Zayto brings up the good point that the cycles weren't always just for, you know, getting from point A to point B. They also served an offensive purpose. You know, Zayto ends up, you know, pulling up clips of some of the offensive cycles. More specifically, he ends up using Haley's cycle from, was it Ninja Steel? I don't remember the name of the cycle, but he ends up using a clip from Ninja Steel to kind of illustrate his point, and it's a good point. Yeah, a lot of the Rangers did have offensive cycles they can use. Hell, Carter used his cycle in Lightspeed Rescue to make it into a battleizer, so there's definitely precedent and for doing that in the past. I know that we're not at our likes yet, but one thing I did like about this is that they were able to actually use a lot of the actors' voices. In fact, the only voice they didn't use was Tommy. When it came to Billy and Rocky, they used their voices. When it came to Tori, Jaden, and Haley, they used their voices too. And that was nice that they were able to kind of salvage something for that. I honestly didn't expect that. And hopefully, if they use further clips from Legendary Ranger seasons, you know, going forward, they're able to kind of salvage their voices there as well. So all this is a good plan, but again, they don't have any spare parts to use because they were all in that container that Ion kind of, you know, broke. So Ion offers up his motorcycle to turn into what's eventually going to become the Dino Fury cycle. You know, Wreckmate pops up again. Ion goes to hold him off. He runs out of his potion just before he can finish off Ion, and then Zayto comes in for the save with the Dino Fury cycle. I'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, he doesn't actually end up destroying Wreckmate, just I guess wounding him. And then we go back to the base and beat Flargan with our hands. Yeah, that's pretty much the episode. So for my likes, my first thing is I really like the rivalry between Slither and Wreckmate. I hope we see more of that in the future. There's a section there in the episode where Slither is reprimanding Wreckmate for not having any style or theatricality in his fight. And I love that because it's totally in line with Slither's style and theatricality, and it's my favorite part of any interaction with Slither. Another thing I liked about this episode was obviously the usage of the Legendary Ranger database. You know, we've gotten a lot of use out of that mechanic, and I like the fact that Zayto was the one to mention that, hey, maybe we can, you know, search back through the history and kind of build something that we can use based on their own schematics. It reminded me of when the Super Megaforce Rangers were having trouble. I think it was in the Jungle Fury tribute episode, and the monster in that episode, you know, kept taking their weapons. So Noah and Jake looked through the legendary Ranger database at the time to see, okay, well, you know, what are some what are some weapons that they could use? Either that, or were there any other Rangers who fought hand to hand that we can kind of glean their abilities off of? I don't remember exactly the plot of that episode, but yeah, it was a nice little throw moment that reminded me of that moment. And then just before Zayto goes back to get the Dino Chucks, he says "burb," and then Amelia's like, "I told him it's BRB," and like, that's funny. Like, again, I will love my Zayto-isms till I die, so that's not a surprise to y'all. But speaking of the Dino Chucks, their one and only fight was actually really, really good. Like, again, we don't see nunchucks in Power Rangers often, if ever. I mean, it's only happened in Jungle Fury, and seeing them here and seeing such good fight choreography was nice. Like, I was actually hoping that this would be an original Power Rangers weapon going forward, but again, it looks like that's not going to be the case. I will say that it was kind of awkward, Zayto fighting with the nunchucks and with his sword off to his side. That was a little bit weird, but still, yeah, it was a good fight. And really, my only dislike for this episode was the Dino cycle itself. I think it's too wide or something along those lines. It just doesn't look good compared to the Power Rangers exclusive cycles in the past. You know, the Red Cap, actually, I don't think the Red Capsule cycle was Power Rangers exclusive. But Carter's cycle in Lightspeed Rescue, the Savage cycles in Wild Force, Ethan's cycle in Dino Thunder. Like, we've had better cycles in Power Rangers. I don't know. I don't think that this one was up to snuff. I think it's because of how big it was. I honestly do. Like, it didn't. All those other cycles I just mentioned, they all look like modified. You could see the base of the motorcycle in it, and it just had added parts onto it. Whereas this one, you couldn't really do that because of how big it was. But yeah, I wish that they had made it smaller so they can give us a real motorcycle just with added elements onto it. But I mean, I honestly can't say that I'm excited about seeing it again in the future. Like, this was honestly a kind of a poor showing for it, because you have Zayto using the cycle in this episode, and it doesn't even destroy the bad guy. It just injures him, and he, gets out of there. Like, that's not impressive. It's not an impressive debut for a new Power Rangers exclusive weapon. But anyway, as for my conclusion, I thought the episode was okay, just okay. I mean, there were parts I liked, but for the most part, I mean, yeah, it was okay. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about this one. Again, there are no questions of the week this time around, so that's really it for this episode review. Let me know what y'all thought about this in the comment section below. Did y'all like this episode? Do you think it was great? Let me know. As always, like and subscribe as well, please. That helps me out. Until next time, though, wear your mask, stay safe, get your booster, get your vaccine, and otherwise have a good week and stay safe. Peace.